So usually once or twice a year, my wife and I, we do these personal retreats. My wife is really good about doing it twice a year, and I'll typically do about one a year, but sometimes we go at the same time. And so a few years ago, we decided to both take retreats on the same days, but at two different locations. And you may wonder why we chose two different locations, but it's because we're really going to have solitude and silence and to connect with God and to think and to be really alone with God. And I think that if Laura and I were together on a retreat, we would just talk and laugh and have fun together and end up kind of neglecting some of the kind of personal connection with God that we were trying to make. And so we both went on two separate ones. And the plan was that we would get in the car together and head west on the Bluegrass Parkway, and we were going to stop in Bardstown, Kentucky, and I would drop Laura off at Gethsemane, which is this beautiful monastery where she likes to go for retreats. And then I would keep going all the way to Litchfield, Kentucky, to a place called Camp Lucan, where I'd reserved they have like a pastor's retreat cottage that you're able to rent as a pastor in the Methodist Church, which is pretty cool. And so we did this. And so we went, and the purpose for both of us was really to pray over the church, over common good, over the community, and to also do some planning for the year. You know, I like to get away for a few days just to plan out sermons and think through kind of what I ought to be doing, what we ought to be doing as a church for the year. And I did this actually earlier this year as well, but this was a few years ago. And so our plans were set, and we hit the road, and we were preparing ourselves for being alone for a couple of days. And we were both anxious to get to our rooms, get situated, and so we were moving on the road, ready to get there. And so something that I hate, one of the worst things happened, as we approached the Bardstown exit, I heard a ding, like a sound that my car made, and then I saw a red light appear on my dashboard. And the light was in the shape of a car battery. And immediately my mood changed. I was excited at first, but then I got frustrated. I got mad, and then I started to get worried, like, what is this going to mean? And I remembered when I saw the battery light, those few times that I'd been to Valvoline to get my oil change before that, where the guy was like, "Sir, we did a battery test, and it says that you need a new battery." And of course, I'm like, my battery's fine. I don't need a new battery. I'm good. And so when I was looking at the light on the dash, I was thinking, man, I'm an idiot. I should have listened to them and got my battery replaced because I'm clearly having an issue. And so as soon as I exited the interstate, another red light appeared on the dash, and it was the airbag signal or symbol. And I have no idea why that was coming on, but I didn't like that red lights kept popping up on my dashboard. And then the car started stuttering. The radio went in and out, and the lights started going off and on. And the car was like starting to act like it was possessed. And I started getting nervous, and I saw a Walmart, and so I'm not a huge fan of Walmart sometimes, but I was like, this is the only thing I see. So I pulled in around to the back to the automotive section where they work on cars and do oil changes and stuff. And so as I pulled into my parking spot, the car literally just died right there. And I'm like mad. I'm like, come on, we had this retreat planned. And so we went inside, and I bought a battery. And I was like, hey, can y'all put this in? And I waited for them to install it. And as they were working, one of the Walmart employees came out, and he's like, man, I jumped your car, and then it died real quick. And that probably means it's not your battery, but it's the alternator. And to be honest, I didn't believe him. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, man. And so but I asked him, I said, well, if it's the alternator, where can I get one of those installed here in town? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, you don't know? He had no clue. I was getting annoyed. I was thinking, you mean you work at the automotive section at Walmart, and you have no clue where a mechanic is in this small town of Bardstown? So I was like, dude, just put the battery in anyway. And I thought the alternator was probably fine and I'd be all right. And then the employee came back over again, and he had this like concerned look on his face, like he had done something wrong. And he said, hey man, like you wouldn't happen to have a spare key to your car, would you? I'm like, what? Why? And I look at him, he kind of confesses. He's like, I locked your keys in the car, and it's still running actually. And I was very annoyed at that point. I was like, dude, are you serious, man? You locked my keys in my car. So I was like, Laura, did you bring your keys? And fortunately, she had her car key, and we got into our car, and it seemed like this guy didn't really know what was going on. So I was like, we're gonna be fine. It's probably the battery. So we drove away with the new battery, and immediately the red light came on again, battery problems. And I was like, well, darn, I guess we probably need a new alternator. So we drove to an Advanced Auto Parts up the road, and I walked in and I asked them, I said, hey, can you all test my alternator? And the young man behind the counter, he's like, sure, I'll test it for you. And immediately he walked outside and he did the test. And as I expected, I needed a new alternator. And I told him, I said, man, I'm from Lexington and we're trying to get somewhere and I really need this replaced today. Do you know anybody who could put in a new alternator for me? And immediately guy picked up the phone and he called a local mechanic and he asked, he's like, hey, I got these people in here in the shop. Do you think you could help them get a new alternator? And they're in a hurry. They're on their way somewhere. They really need this help. And so the guy apparently said, yes, I'll do it for him. And so the guy in Advanced Auto Parts hung up the phone and he made another call and he found the alternator I needed over at AutoZone, another store in town. And so instead of telling us to go get it, he hopped into his truck, he drove over to AutoZone and brought back this new alternator. And he came back in and he sold it to me. Then he said, hey, I've worked it out a deal for you. Go to Quick Auto. It's a place here in town. He's like, and they'll put it in for you. It's just right up the road. He told me who to ask for. And so we drove over to Quick Auto, and these guys got to work immediately. And within 45 minutes, we were on our way. Now, I'll tell you, by the time I arrived at Advanced Auto Parts, I was stressed, I was mad, I was worried, and I was like, our retreats are going to be ruined. We're not going to get to do this. And I expected to be in Bardstown all day waiting for our car to be repaired. However, that young man at Advanced Auto, he showed us a lot of kindness. He just showed us like simple kindness and generosity. And I'll tell you, it completely turned our day around. And to be honest, in some ways, my day was even better than it had been before the car issues, because that helpful guy at Advanced Auto Parts made such an impact on me. And I was like, man, who does that? Who's so kind like that? And he put me in a better mood that I was in even before I had that trouble. And it's fascinating to me how these simple, small acts of generosity and kindness can be so powerful, right? It didn't take a lot from him, but he was willing to give me what I needed and help me out. And it really changed the course of my week. Over the last really few years, I've been reflecting quite a bit on the fruit of the Spirit that we find and read about in the book of Galatians. Y'all know what I'm talking about, the fruit of the Spirit. Well, Paul says that the fruit of the Spirit, and I'm going to put these on the screen so you can see them. He says that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Y'all have probably seen these before, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And what Paul is saying here is that if the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is at work in your life, then these things are going to be there. They're going to be evident. You're going to see them. And really, I think what he's saying is the fruit of the Spirit really is the fundamental activity of God in human lives. This is primarily how God works through followers of Jesus. It's through these things. And as I read these qualities, love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, just goodness and faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, I can't help but notice that these things all seem fairly simple and fairly normal things, right? I mean, we sing children's songs about the fruit of the Spirit. There's a song at Aldersgate that they sing where it's like, the fruit of the Spirit's not an apple. The fruit of the Spirit's not an apple. If you want to be a spirit, or if you want to be the Spirit, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit because the fruit is love. And it sings it. I think I butchered that, but that's kind of how it goes. And the cool thing about it is these qualities are so simple that kids can really understand them. Kids know what kindness is. Kids know what it means to be gentle. Kids understand self-control and what that means and what it doesn't mean. Yeah, it's pretty cool that these qualities, these simple qualities and actions are the ways that God makes an impact on the world through his followers. It's through these kind of just good, simple, beautiful things that we do for one another. And when you really think deeply about this, you will see that these things can make a dramatic and powerful impact in a person's life and in an actual community. Let me break these down just for a minute. Think about love. My mom, for instance, has shown me unconditional love in my life. And the primary ways she's shown it is through just practically caring for me, doing my laundry, working third shift, and making that sacrifice so I would have what I needed as a child, through forgiving me when I ignored my parents and didn't say thank you, for just cooking meals tirelessly for me and my family. And when I was a child, even to and as an adult today, that love, that fruit of the Spirit in her life has helped me become who I am today. We can think about joy. I remember meeting some people in Jamaica on my first trip when I went outside of the country for the first time. And I went to Jamaica and I was kind of blown away by how little they had as far as material possessions. But they had this unshakable joy in their life. And when I met them, they caused me and many others to want more of Jesus and more of that joy in my own life. Think about peace when counselors and teachers sit down with students and their parents and they talk through issues and seek reconciliation and peace, right? And they make an impact that goes way beyond just the classroom. It's kind of an unnoticed thing that they're doing, but it's creating this peace and reconciliation that can have a ripple effect across the community. Think about patience. When my wife and the other staff at Common Good, like Brenda and Noran and Philip and Dorcas and Eder and Carissa and Jason and Jonathan and all of them, they invest in students for many years without giving up on them, showing incredible patience with them. And many of these students now have graduated high school and are going to college and finished college even. I think of kindness when that advanced auto parts worker showed me kindness, right? And he just did something kind. He helped me get a new alternator, but it changed the course of my day and helped me have a really good retreat. I think about goodness when a woman notices her coworker is sad and she stays a few minutes after work to talk to her. That goodness shown to her communicates to that coworker that she's not alone. I think about faithfulness when a husband or a wife stays faithful to their spouse, when their spouse maybe is suffering from mental illness or just going through a hard time and they need that healing and reprieve after many years of struggle. That faithfulness is just a beautiful thing that nobody notices, but it's a beautiful thing. I think of gentleness when a big sister is gentle with her siblings, knowing that they've had hard lives, and she can help fill that void of growing up without a mother. I think about self-control, maybe when an alcoholic, I've known alcoholics that are just so courageous and bold, and they learn self-control through many years of pain and prayer and trying, and that self-control that they offer to others in their story. It helps people at the meetings to feel like they can kick addictions. You see, I think God likes to work in the world through everyday, simple, normal actions of his people. And I don't want us to believe those lies that say we have to have an important job, we have to make a lot of money, we have to have a big family or look real pretty or have children or be real smart in order to make an impact in the world. Like, you don't have to have those things. Mother Teresa, who I have her picture in my office, I've said this a lot, but I love it. She says, "We can do no great things, but only small things with great love." And there's this author and professor named Adam Grant that I came across a while back, and he does a lot of writing and speaking and teaching about kind of stuff in the workplace and how to be a good coworker. And he did a lot of study on the subject of generosity, and particularly generosity in the workplace. And he argues that one of the best ways to help someone is to do what he calls a 5-minute favor. Just 5 minutes, all right? 5-minute favor. And he says basically that sometimes a 5-minute favor may not be enough, but many favors and acts of kindness don't actually take a very long time. And we have to be willing sometimes just to slightly inconvenience ourselves sometimes to help out another person. And I want to show you what he kind of describes these as. He says that 5-minute favors are micro loans of our knowledge, our skills, and our connections to other people. I like that. Micro loans of our knowledge, our skills, and our connections to other people. And I don't know like if that guy at Advanced Auto Parts that I encountered was a Christian, but I think he had some fruit in his life, right? For only about 5 minutes, he offered his knowledge about batteries and alternators. He used his skills to test out my car, and he used his connections at Quick Auto to get my car fixed in less than an hour. And that small act of kindness or that 5-minute favor ended up changing my week, right? And he could have thought, I'm too busy to mess with this dude. I'll just tell him I can't do it. He needs to find a place. But he offered that to me, right? I have some friends who are willing to help me out when I call them up, and they'll give me just a few minutes with their connections or whatever their knowledge is to help me out. And it just means so much. These kind of small, unnoticed acts of love and kindness can make a dramatic impact in someone's life. And I know that God is wanting to use each of us to make an impact in our communities, our workplaces, our families, our churches, our schools, and our friend groups. And I think that God's primary way of working through you is going to be through these normal, everyday acts of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. I think that sometimes in Christian circles, we prioritize the gifts of the Spirit over the fruit of the Spirit. And we think a Spirit-filled person is someone who can preach a powerful sermon or can speak in tongues or through someone who gets real amped up and excited, during church about God. But I think that really the priority in Scripture, if you had to pick one, the fruit of the Spirit is way more impactful and important. Don't get caught up in the lure of big things or extraordinary gifts or recognition and acknowledgement. Let's just try this week maybe to commit ourselves to doing small things with great love, trusting that God can take our small acts of love and use them to transform lives and communities. And I know that you've heard a message similar to this from me and from others many, many times because this is something we need to remind ourselves of. But I know that just these small things that we do for one another and trying to have the fruit of the Spirit in our lives through God's power working through us really can make a positive impact. So just a little kind of word of encouragement I wanted to share with you guys today, and just a bit of a challenge to me and to you to really think about our lives. Is the fruit of the Spirit evident in our lives? The Bible talks about you can know a tree by its fruit. And what does our fruit say about us? Is this the kind of fruit in our lives? And if not, then we need to continue to press into God and to Christ and allow the Holy Spirit to do that work of transformation in us so that we can truly be Spirit-filled people who show this goodness and sow these seeds of faithfulness and gentleness and love and patience and all this good stuff throughout our families and our workplaces and our communities and wherever we are spending our time. So